Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Age of Quarantine. It's been a fucking long time. I'm David Castillo from Saint Vitus. I'm also the artist Confines. You can find me at Confines World on the internet, aka Instagram, aka wherever. Today, I have a friend, co-conspirator, amazing person, Andi Harriman, aka the Dawn of Synthicide, which is probably one of the best parties going in New York. Supposed to be celebrating 7 years. Also a label that I am on and proudly on, as well as she's just an amazing author, DJ, producer, makes her own fucking great music. So let's get to it. I see her in here. Without further ado, welcome to the Age of Quarantine. Hope everybody's good out there. Much love. It's a fucking weird, crazy time. Uh-oh. Andy, you declined my you declined my invite. Let's try this again. I sent you a request, Andy, so we'll see how that goes. There she is. Brunette versus blonde in a fucking battle royale.
I know. What's up?
Not too much. How are you?
I'm okay. Getting by.
MBK hanging out. So, Andy, welcome to the Age of Quarantine. Thank you for joining me today.
Of course.
Kicking off the year right. So, I wanted to talk, here at the Age of Quarantine, we pretty much just look at everyone's sort of musical history, kind of go into how they got into stuff, and we kind of start, right from basically childhood all the way up to kind of present day and kind of go pretty into a deep dive. So you are born and raised in New York. Can you tell me where you're from and just kind of like early sort of beginnings like that?
Well, I'm from Pulaski, Virginia. I don't know if you can hear from my accent, but I'm from the Appalachian Mountains. Appalachian. That's how I know if you're Southern or not. If you say Appalachian, you're not.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's about, I don't know, an hour from West Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee. So it's like in that little corner to the left. Yeah, nothing to do there.
I was about to say, so from Virginia all the way to being what you are now, that is a pretty kind of wild, course to chart, and we're going to attempt to chart it here. So let's talk about music in general. When you were young, when you were really young, and what was kind of like your earlier memories of being like, I'm just attracted to music, it's something I care about? What was sort of the earlier sort of things that sort of stuck with you?
I would say probably I was raised super Christian. I was always like the black sheep of the family. So my mom was like, you can't listen to like modern radio. You have to listen to like the soft rock station. So like it was all of this like DX7 synthesizer stuff, all the 80s, like Phil Collins, like just all that stuff. I really like, yeah. It's just all that stuff really stuck with me, and like the whole Miami Vice thing. I've just always been obsessed with that era. So just my obsession with the 80s has like always been there.
Yeah, you always post Don Johnson pics.
Yeah, that's like
following Andy. She's got Don Johnson just all over the gram.
That's my secret. My guilty pleasure is Miami Vice, Don Johnson, and
Miami Vice. That'll be the new thing. Just wait till summertime. But,
I like that.
Yeah, so a lot of that is kind of interesting, right? I feel like on this program, you find out a lot about people in terms of like, just kind of how they got into stuff. Sometimes it's the unlikely stuff, right? So you weren't able to really access sort of like modern alternative radio. So do you think that was sort of the thing where you're like, hey, maybe I'm not really that exposed as much, or maybe I can't be, I'm not allowed to be, to rock music. So the synth stuff started kind of creeping in a little bit at an early age, do you think? Kind of almost like subconsciously?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, as a teenager, I was like watching a lot of like MTV and stuff. So I was influenced by that. I mean, the first time I heard it like a New Order song, honestly, though, was the Orgy cover.
The
So
Blue
I didn't
Monday
even know that
cover.
was a cover. So I was like, I had a huge crush on this guy who like loved Marilyn Manson and Orgy. So I was like all about that stuff for a little while. Not really Manson, but more so Orgy. I was really into that. But I had to hide the CD from my parents.
And see, that's really interesting, right? Because a lot of people, you know, the way that they kind of get into stuff, and like, it's not really sometimes like this particularly cool way. You're like, hey,
Oh
this
yeah,
new
not
metal
cool.
band covered this, and you're a teen in Virginia, right? Just trying to find some shit that you can kind of really identify and get into. And that was the thing. But then you start discovering, oh, that's actually a New Order song, right? And everyone has those moments where they start drilling down and just kind of figuring out what they like and, you know, where they sort of come from, right? So
Yeah.
for you, you kind of were checking that sort of stuff out. In Virginia, like you said, there's not much around, not much to sort of do. And now I guess you're kind of moving into like teenage years. You said you had this boyfriend who was kind of into some of these.
Well, he wasn't my boyfriend. He wouldn't date me.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
But this guy, this dude, this ingenue from Virginia. But, you know, what was it like kind of in your teen years and trying to get into maybe more regional music or just kind of your own tastes and things like that? What was like teen Andy trying to get down with as far as like discovering music?
I mean, there really was not a scene.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like, I don't know, there was like Virginia Tech, so I would go over there and go to like the CD store and get some CDs. I mean, that's where I got my first Depeche Mode CD. But there was nothing to do there. So I like drove around and hung out. I had like a couple friends, but like I never connected with people down there really. So I was very isolated. I also had really bad social anxiety and like couldn't, it was just, it was a really bad time down there. I wouldn't recommend going.
Yeah. So Virginia, we're staying away. So,
Yeah.
So in terms of just kind of finding a scene, finding yourself, it was kind of difficult, right? Because you're in the middle of kind of nowhere, you know, like I remember talking to a friend, you know, I have a friend named Cole. He grew up in Oklahoma in the 90s, you know, and, you know, he was just talking about, I had to drive all the way to Texas to see a show. I saw maybe like 10 shows in all my teen years because they just couldn't really do it. A lot of stuff didn't come, right? So what was it like in terms of developing your taste? Was it mostly like going to record stores and trying to figure out stuff on your own? Because you've obviously written a book on basically, you know, God culture and things of that nature. Somewhere leather, somewhere lace. Go out and get it. It's a great, beautiful book. Andy's got some copies. But, you know, was it more of like a studious thing as opposed to something that you could participate in because of where you were?
Yeah, it was actually exactly that. I've always been a really obsessive collector of like remix CDs, 12-inch remixes, like trying to find every facet of like my favorite bands, and I've always done that. But I was in grad school when I wrote the book, so that was in Savannah, Georgia, which is also very isolating. I was actually there at the same time as Boy Harsher, but we never crossed paths, unfortunately.
Ah, okay. So let's chart that a little bit. So you're in high school and stuff like that, and you're interested in music. Was the idea to like, hey, I want to go to school to become like a music journalist? Was that kind of your path, or how did you get down to Savannah?
In a very like backwards way, I went to school for metalsmithing. I got my undergrad in metalsmithing. And creative writing. So I was doing both of those at the same time. But then I went to grad school also for jewelry design. And when I was there, I just was like, I should be writing. And so I have 2 degrees in like jewelry design, metalsmithing, art, MFA, BFA. So
you're blowing me away.
It's
the
very
secrets of Andi Harriman. You just don't know. She can metalsmith something for you, and
I can
she can
solder
make you a beautiful remix CD. I mean, we can do it all here, folks. That's amazing. So that's sort of sort of more professionalized move into writing about kind of music and culture, kind of, it came a little bit at the tail end when you were in college and you were sort of like starting to participate maybe it's, you know, Savannah, Athens, you know, like in Georgia there are some really great kind of indie scenes kind of around. Savannah has actually, speaking of metal, a pretty decent, there's some cool bands that have come out of Savannah, Kylesa, Black Tusk, things of that nature, but not really the kind of stuff that, you know, is sort of like that you sort of cover or are interested in. What was it like kind of going to school there? And, you know, did you kind of find some kindred spirits after a while of, you know, being in the middle of Virginia and not feeling, you know, not really connecting?
Well, I think the funny thing is that I had never experienced the goth scene until I came to New York. Because I was after moving from Pulaski, I went to Richmond for undergrad and I lived there for 7 years. And after I left, now Richmond has a pretty good goth scene actually. But while I was there, it was like hardcore and actually a lot of black metal.
Yeah. Tons of hardcore.
Yeah. But now I think they have a pretty decent goth scene actually.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of different kind of bands and different nights kind of popping up all over the United States in different places that kind of have a little bit more of that sort of bent, you know, along the lines of what you do with Synthicide. So, but when you were there, unfortunately, young Andi was shit out of luck, huh? She was got the hardcore, so like wishing.
There was an 80s bar though.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting. What was this 80s bar?
It was called I can't remember. It's closed now. I checked recently, but I went there on my 21st birthday and had too many of those like blue motorcycles. It was, it didn't end well.
Yeah, I can imagine most 21st birthdays don't particularly end well. But so Richmond was the stop and then Savannah. And so like you were saying, so, but at the same time, before you hit New York, so you say that you didn't experience like a goth scene that you felt like you could participate in, or people who are like, you know, really like kind of in the mix of bands or more contemporary things. Because in reality, I feel like on a local level or a lot of things like that, like, yeah, I've always grown up around New York, right? Long Island. And there was even a goth club in Mineola, Long Island, that I used to go to when I was in college. And then there's, you know, QXTs in Newark and stuff. Like this little area's always had some stuff. And I grew up close to the biggest city, but I know like all around that it hasn't been the case, as we just said. You know, Richmond developed, different people have developed over time. And also there weren't tons of new bands making things kind of in that zone for a while, right? But all during this time when you were in Savannah, you were writing a fucking book on it, right? So can you tell me about just what the idea was to do the book, why you wanted to do it, and why that became so compelling that it pulled you away from, you know, all the jewelry design and stuff like that?
Well, I went to grad school because I saw this exhibit here in New York at the FIT Museum. It was called Dark Glamour. I don't know if you heard of it, but it was just this exhibit on all goth things. And it was like clothes, jewelry, all this stuff. And when I went there, I realized, oh, I could like have a career in goth stuff, you know? So I went to grad school. I was like, I'm going to make goth jewelry and all this stuff, which I did. But as I was researching, I noticed there was this like huge gap in goth history. There were no books about that specific look of 80s post-punk or goth or whatever. A lot of the books were 90s focused, or it was kind of a survey of the scene from decades. And I was like, I should just make the book I want to see. And I really didn't know what I was doing. I just interviewed people. I raised the Kickstarter money to buy photos. It was all very, very DIY. I would go to like book fairs and try to pitch my book to people, which is like saying a lot for someone who had social anxiety growing up. I mean, I still do a little bit, but like it was really something that I just felt like I needed to do, and I managed to do it.
Yeah, I think that that's something that's really, it's a powerful thing where I think when you realize that you basically can make the thing, you know, instead of like looking around, you're like, no one's fucking done this, fuck, but I want this thing, or like this needs to be talked about, or this needs to be made, or whatever. When you
Hmm.
realize you can do it and you do achieve that, there's something really beautiful to doing that. Like you said, you didn't know what you were doing. Well, I didn't know what I was doing when I started Saint Vitus, honestly, you know, so who knows, you know, but those
Yeah.
are kind of the best ideas is when you're following your nose and figuring that out. So that's kind of an amazing thing. You were researching pretty much material to make your own clothes and sort of, you know, this sort of this goth aesthetic that you sort of imagine, but then hey, you ended up writing a book to fill in the thing that you couldn't find in the library, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's wild. That's amazing. So the book comes out, and I guess, you know, through doing all that, you must have met some pretty amazing people. Is there any kind of like interview or particularly, you know, anything that you found that kind of sticks out from that time period that was particularly inspiring?
I mean, I did some release parties, some book release parties. Yeah, I did one in Berlin, I did one in London, and one here in New York. And I did a panel at Rough Trade for here. And in Berlin, I had a really fun party where I had Hamish, who was one of the original Batcave DJs. He did an amazing set. Um,
For
yeah.
those who don't know, the Batcave was a famous god club in New York City that is now.
No,
But,
no, in London, the Batcave in London, the
oh, I'm so sorry.
original
The
Batcave.
original. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, I have been corrected to the nth
Mm,
degree. But there was a Batcave in New York too.
yeah.
So it's like just like
Sorry, I didn't specify.
we just like crossed there, but it's fine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, but that's also double amazing and showing also that it's an international affair. It's a
Oh, yeah.
international scene that crossed over, much like, you know, New York and London and punk and then post punk and so on. There was always this sort of like dialogue between those cities, I feel like. So you did these book release parties, things of that nature. Anything that's actually in the book that particularly kind of like piqued your interest that you want to share with us that was just like, hey, I found this out and it's particularly kind of cool.
I mean, I think an interesting part was how people told me how they would make their clothes because there weren't really that many black clothes in the 80s, like in the early 80s. So they would dye all their clothes and they taught us how, they were like, there's a part where one person is like telling us how they put everything in a pot and like stirred it, and then also like how they did their hair and like crimped it and like put glue in it, and just all these super DIY ways that I think now we kind of take for granted.
Yeah, that's so true. You
You know?
probably, going back to our buddy Don, you know, it was easier to find like a salmon colored like
Yes.
top or something like that
Yeah, like Miami Vice colors.
than you know every kind of like black, you know, kind of garment that you want however you want it, which now it's like, you know, everything from like, you know, Rick Owens to anything else, it's like
Yeah.
everything's black, right? So
Hmm.
that's definitely a huge sea change and something really interesting. So you come here, right? So you write the book in Savannah, right?
Well, I finished it up here,
And then you
actually.
finished it. Yeah, I was about to say, because I thought that when we had met, I kind of had heard of you a little bit, but just because of Nikki, but like we met because I was DJing and we talked, but we'll get there.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell me about just coming to New York, wanting to come to New York, and how you found it when you first arrived.
Well, I'd done like some internships while I was in grad school, so I stayed two summers here. And then in 13, I moved here. No, 2012, right after Christmas, I came with one suitcase, 18-hour train ride from Savannah. I had sold all my shit.
Wow.
I smelled terrible when I got off that train. I would not recommend that either. Like, don't take an 18-hour train.
The 18-hour train to New York is not the one.
Yeah, with a
That you
suitcase.
do.
Oh man. So I lived on my friend's couch for like, there were two of us living on the same couch.
Oh, when we
Um,
were young.
yeah, no, I can't imagine. Like you kind of think about like, how did I actually do that?
Oh
You
yeah.
know, some things you've done when you're younger because you don't really like think it's that bad, but when you look back on it, you're like, suspicious.
Yeah. It's an 18-hour train ride, doubling up on a couch and your friend, and you were just like,
Hmm.
fuck it, I'm going to New York. It's time
Yeah.
to be in Gotham or in one of the places that could actually sort of support, the things that you truly like. So you were finishing the book here, and how did you
Hmm.
find New York and finally kind of maybe being in a place where you kind of can connect to some of the things that you love?
Well, it was my dream. I think I've never thought about living anywhere else, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I was just kind of like, it seemed like the final step. Like
Yeah.
there was no other option for me. So, I just did what I had to. I got a job, like a part-time job, the first 2 weeks I got here, which was really lucky. But yeah, and the other time I spent working on the book, right? And Kickstarter takes so long. I worked like 6 months on a Kickstarter. I mean, you
Yeah.
know how it is.
Yeah. No,
Kickstarters
definitely.
are so hard.
It is. It takes time and it's a lot of planning, and it's not an easy thing, but at the same time it's a great platform, and you can do a lot with it, but it's like it's not an easy endeavor. Anyone who wants to do something like that, it's like it's intense, but it's
Yeah.
also a great way to kind of create a project for yourself and get it past the finish line to make something a reality. So you come
Mm.
out with the book and stuff like that. And obviously you've been collecting records and been really into this music for a long time. How was it to kind of get into DJing, and how did that sort of come? When did that come along the path for
Um,
you?
well, you know what I started on? I downloaded the little tractor app on my iPhone.
Really? That's
Yeah. And
oh,
I
for
started
someone who
like,
has a ton of records, that makes me happy. That's really
I know, well, I was like, I would get on the train and go visit my parents sometimes, and I would just like make little mixes of like industrial tracks on my tractor.
swipe left for front 242.
Yeah,
Swipe right for something else.
exactly.
Yeah. Wow. So you kind of just started that, on that level, and what was the kind of motivation to get into DJing? Because I mean, everybody who hasn't seen a stream or hasn't been to an event, Andy's a fucking killer.
Oh,
I
thanks.
love your DJ sets. I mean, I love the party and everything. We obviously work together, but that's kind of how we really met. That's how it sort of happened. And I knew
Right.
you as a DJ, primarily. So when did you really start kind of like doing gigs and getting kind of involved in really becoming a little bit more than a iPhone tractor DJ?
I think in 2013 I started like my first party was Arkham, which was at Don Pedro.
Yeah, well, ARKHAM, right? Like Arkham House.
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember
that was
that
my
joint.
first
All
gig.
right.
I miss Don Pedro so much. I miss Arkham. I really loved when DJ Jose Francis was doing it. He had really good taste. So
Sure.
like, I just kind of listened and watched people. I'm really good at that and just trying to ingest things. Um, so that's mainly what I did to do that. But then, I was like, I really want to play records.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'd been, when you have like your turntables and you're trying to figure out beat matching, it's like it's really hard actually, and you have to like really practice a lot. It's not something you can like pick up like in a couple days. There's
No
no
way. I
sync
mean,
button.
true turntablist skills like beat matching and being able to scratch, or if you get into more like hip hop DJing and stuff like that, but it's just as complex as playing a guitar or anything like that, in my opinion. And I DJ and I make music obviously and do those things, and in
Hmm.
my estimation, that's so much. And you really have to know the music really intimately to be able to beat match it appropriately,
Yeah.
especially when you're talking about stuff that's not really machine music totally, or isn't made to a click track.
Yeah. Right.
120 BPMs for one person might be a little like 120-ish BPMs for
Yeah.
somebody else. It really is, you got to know it. So that's really, so just picking up those skills, did anybody kind of help you along the way, or do we have any like DJ kindred spirits that have given you some advice or anything like that, or was it mostly just going to gigs and kind of seeing what people were doing and kind of taking it in that way?
Shit, what's his name? Trying to think of his name. Give me a minute. Let's go back to that.
Yeah, we'll get back to that. I put you on the spot. That's what I do.
I can't remember his name.
Yeah. But if you're out there and you helped Andy learn how to DJ, chime in. Let us know.
I hope you're not watching because I would feel terrible.
Let us know if you taught Andy how to DJ. Please phone in to Age of Quarantine, 1-800-QUARANTINE.
I'm so embarrassed right now. Oh my god.
There have been plenty of people that helped me along the way, and people that I sort of studied and looked up to, like Star Eyes, Vivian, for example, who's a good friend and was always kind of telling me certain things, and just
that's awesome.
Always, yeah. I mean, my friend Mike and Luca, who's now Curses, they started Trouble and Bass. My friend Patrick, and although not, that like goth or new wave music, their impact on New York and DJ culture is like definitely unrivaled. And as far as Vivian's concerned, she was always particularly down with the dark stuff, and definitely Luca as well. So they would jump off and like go do like sets with like rock and do only like new wave sets and other shit like that. And that's the kind of stuff that I was really into and kind of excited about. So when you got your kind of like your bearings as a DJ and you felt like things are going pretty good, let's talk about Synthicide. It's one of the great parties in New York. It's also an amazing record label with great artists on it, like Anatomy, Blue Anxiety, you have Fiore, you have Confines, genius. But you have a lot of really cool artists, and it really started from you DJing party and really grew into a lot of other things. So how did it start? Tell me about why you wanted to do it and how it kind of came together.
Well, I had really been into the industrial scene here, which was DEF CON at the Pyramid. I went there like every single week for, I don't know, 2 years or something. But I was also like, I saw the goth scene and how there were certain rules and like you had to dress a certain way, or it was this weird, like these weird unsaid rules. And I always felt like I was being judged a little bit. I don't know. I really wanted to make a space where everyone could just have fun and not be judged, and just kind of like a mixture of stuff. So like you could play goth or you could play industrial, or like I was really getting it, like Schweffelgelb was coming up at that time, so there was more of that new EBM sort of sound coming up, and no one was playing that in New York really.
Yeah.
So I wanted a place to do all that, and like I'd been to Bossa, they had just opened. I was like, this looks like Miami Vice, like Oasis Paradise. So I was like, I wrote them and I was like, hey, can I have a party here? And they're like, well, we have Sundays, Sunday happy hour. And I'm like, hell yeah, let's do a Sunday happy hour.
Let's go, baby. Sunday happy hour. We're
yeah.
It out.
No pay, but free drinks, So I was like, hell yeah, let's do this. So the very first party, I had Jose Francis, who did Arkham. And we both did it, and I'm surprised they let me back because I had so many vodka sodas that like I puked on the bar, and I passed out in the bathroom and had locked the door behind me.
So, you're fired. I'm firing you now.
They let me keep going. I was stunned, and then I did that for a year, the happy hour, and then I was like, it's my 1 year, and they're like, can I have like a weekday so I could make a little bit of money and get a nice DJ?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, why don't you just do every Thursday night? No, once a month. And I was like, hell yeah. So they graduated me to Thursday nights, and 7 years later, I mean, assuming that I go back to Bossa, but
Yeah. And that's just kind of how it did and built, and your sort of vision for trying to kind of make something that included some of those sort of genres
Yeah.
before, you know, the industrial things of that nature, but also wasn't too strict in its definition, something that was kind of wide. I know it's Synthicide as just a name. It's like it's a kind of a wide palette of things that you can kind of associate with that. Did you go to Weird or Nothing Changes or anything around those times, or are you mostly in the DEF CON sort of area?
I would go to I tried to go to the very last Weird, and it was just too packed.
I was in there, but it was insane, dude.
It was wild. So unfortunately, that was my only Weird experience. But I would go to Nothing Changes a lot.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that. That's kind of where I met Fade and, you know,
and
a
that's
bunch
where
of
we
people.
met.
Was it?
Yep. I remember it because so I was DJing for Nikki. A shout out to Nikki Snakers, my best friend, who did Nothing Changes with Soren Roy. But I was DJing, and I forget who was playing, but I was playing a lot of industrial, and I was kind of mixing it in with kind of like newer sort of, you know, techno-y stuff like Silent Servant, but it had kind of leaned with that, like leaned into that a little bit of that world, even though it was that, or like a Vatican Shadow or JK Flesh or whatever. And you came up to me while I was DJing. You're like, "Yo, what's up?" And I was like, "Hey, what you know, whatever." You're like,
"Oh yeah, I
remember
remember
what
that.
You're playing," and I was like, "Oh, sick. All right, cool." So I didn't think of anything of it, and then after I finished playing, you like came up to me at the bar, and you're like, "I want you to play my party," and I was like, "All right, cool, yeah, I'm down." And then you were like, "Oh, Synthicide." I was like, "I've heard the name before, cool." And then that's when I came and I DJ'd for you like once or twice, and then I played my first show at Synthicide too, and that was kind of like the beginning of a lot of stuff. But it was really cool because to me, I've lived in New York for a long time, and it's really refreshing to just have someone just approach you because of what you're playing and being super excited about music. I know it sounds kind of stupid, but there's a lot of excitement over superficiality type things. But I'm like, yeah, no, I really enjoy that SBK song. Like, it's really fucking great, you know, or whatever. And I found the enthusiasm and like the kindred spirit vibe was like strong. And I was like, yeah, cool. Let me go check out this sort of area. So with Synthicide, as you started getting it going on, you know, on Thursdays and stuff of that nature, what did you see it sort of becoming? Because when I walked into it, that was probably like 3 or 4 years ago when I DJ'd it, probably for the first time.
Yeah.
Before I started making music kind of in this realm, you know, in the synth realm. And it was already kind of like this fully formed thing in a way. And I thought it was so cool because I felt it was pulling from maybe some different areas than Nothing Changes, and definitely DEF CON was, but you see some similar people there, you know? What did you think you were starting to achieve the things that you'd set out for the party, like a little bit further down the line?
I don't know if I had any goals really. I think that I was just, like you said, I would go to other parties to scout out DJs because I was just kind of tired of how things were going because one, I noticed the scene was incredibly misogynistic and just all white dudes, and I was fucking tired of that shit. I think maybe that was my goal, was to be more inclusive because it just too many white dudes DJing, honestly.
Yeah. And a little bit, maybe it's also just a little bit too much of just like a, you know, a gatekeepery kind of thing as well.
Yeah.
Right? It becomes this sort of thing where it creates that sort of atmosphere, and then, you know, when you want to have something successful and be, you know, like, you know, for a lot of people, you have to kind of reflect that in the programming a little bit as well. And I always thought that was super great, you know, and I would discover new stuff because of Synthicide. And because of stuff like Nothing Changes and stuff, you know, in different realms. And I was like, oh, I'm being pulled in different places. And that's something that was great. And both those parties were, you know, kind of woman-run parties, different kind of vibes, maybe talking to different people, feeling different music and stuff like that, and I really appreciated that. I learned a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think Bossa helped a lot because of the atmosphere there.
Sure.
Because the fog, they used to be a lot more lenient on like the fog amount, and then they started like policing it because it was just so crazy. But yeah, I think the atmosphere of Bossa, just the people that work there, and just so amazing, you
Yeah, I
know.
mean, shout out to the Helio, the whole fucking
Mm,
squad over there. They are
yeah,
absolutely lovely,
and
and
just family now.
yeah, definitely, really amazing, and an amazing place that we definitely want to see after, this unfortunate pandemic situation.
Yeah,
Whatever crazy time will, that's a place that's very special to me, as it is to you, and the whole kind of dance music community.
yeah,
And willing to give people a shot, and be adventurous in their programming. I think that's important, right? I feel like also when you have, like, I have, Vitus, and I have a big part to play there, right? But we're open, and we're trying to continually always kind of grow and change, bring in new energy, and make something great, And with
right.
that, Bossa taking a chance on you Sunday nights, Thursdays, and being like, yo, we like this, and we're about it, and we're good to put our stamp on it. It really
Mm-hmm.
definitely changed the vibe, obviously, of your party, but also of their bar and what they can do too. They showed
Yeah.
right there. It's not just like the techno bar, right?
Yeah, I think we are a little bit on the outskirts there. We don't always match up with what Bossa does, but I've always felt pretty grateful that they've allowed me to keep doing my party, because I think, yeah, we Syntheside has always been kind of about darker, weirder. It can be techno. Like, I've had some legit techno DJs, but usually it's more EBM industrial stuff, which isn't really part of what Bossa does. But Silent Servant, Carter
Yeah.
Fisher last year. I mean, it's always nice to, mix it up. But sometimes people will come to Synthesize and be like, "This isn't techno," and I'm like, "Good."
Yeah, man. Like,
Like,
just feel what's going on in the room. It's awesome in here. Like,
yeah,
relax.
right.
Yeah. Unfortunately, sometimes people are like not willing to take the ride and the journey, and that's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, it's
Um,
usually tourists though, because they
uh,
read about Bossa and, like, I don't know, some top 10 or 20 list, and they're like, "Oh, gotta go to Bossa."
this is not techno night. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, definitely. I feel that. So let me ask you a question. So after DJing all these years, right? I feel like you started the label to help me honestly put out my first release which was Geography of Nowhere, and it really started to kind of grow from
Was that the
there.
first?
I think it was the first thing that
Oh,
you
I'd put
did.
compilations out though.
Oh yeah, I was the
I'd put
first
two
artist.
compilations.
That's what I was talking about, like just like
Mm,
standalone.
yeah.
And after you saw me play, and Andy, speaking of taking some chances, Andy booked me off of an iPhone video. That's fucking crazy. But and that was really beautiful. Like, that really helped me think that I could potentially do this. And now we're about to do another release, which, hey, world exclusive. Woo! And put out a bunch of music this year,
Hmm.
which I'm really excited about. But then you started really expanding that out, right? You were like, hey, I could kind of help you out, and you were doing those comps, which
Yeah.
were fucking great. If those comps, guys, get them. If you're a DJ, get those comps. They're fucking sick, dude. I'm like sitting there. I'm like, Syntheside track number 4 sounds great.
Yeah.
What made you want to, kind of continue on as the label, and how did that sort of work?
I think mostly just to help out friends or like local artists I believe in. Like, the Anatomy, Blue Anxiety was just because I love both of those bands so much. Like, I just wanted to support them. And then, of course, you, and then the Static Bloom remixes. Just,
Brilliant.
they're good friends. And Fiero is a really good friend of mine. The Henyox one was the only one that I released that I didn't know beforehand, but I heard it and I really believed in it.
Which is a
So,
great record. I mean, I loved it, and I
yeah.
had no idea it was coming, and I was like, damn, what's this that Andy's putting out? And I'm like, dude, that shit is hard.
Yeah, it's good.
it's cool. I was like really excited by it, and I was like, oh, dude, this is great. And also, yeah, I mean, I think that's a great thing because the party has really been a place where I feel like a lot of new, like, New York and kind of regional acts can come
Yeah.
and really, like, if you're down with them, like cut their teeth and like kind of grow. A lot
Yeah.
of us have played Synthicide, and now that you have this other platform to kind of put some music out as well as the party, it's starting to kind of grow its influence even more. And you DJ
Hmm.
all the time as well, so I hear you sneaking things into your mixes and things of that nature, which all really helps us. So we all owe
Hmm.
you a debt of gratitude for making the place, DJing the place, and also putting together the label there, boss.
Well,
So
I owe you too because you let me book my first big show at Vitus,
yeah, but
which was
that again,
Pancow.
yeah, which at the end of the day, it's just me believing in you and the aesthetic and the vibe of what you want to sort of bring in. And,
Hmm.
for people who are, considering, doing events or interested in this part of like Andy's story, right? Like, I run St. Vitus and the talent buying aspect of it a lot, but it's not really just always about me, right? Like you have to maybe look at other people who maybe know and are interested in other things that you might have something about, but maybe you want to learn more and put them in certain situations that could
Hmm.
be good for them. And once I saw what you were doing and the fact that you wanted to also book some bands and stuff, and I had the facility to do that, we
Yeah.
have a responsibility, I think, to make things better for one another. And
Hmm.
and that grew into you doing music for the masses, which is amazing. Kind of
Yeah.
80s,
It's the
80s
most fun thing in this whole world. I miss it
new wave
so
nights.
much.
That is wild at Vitus,
Oh my
and
God.
people just are slammed in there listening to Duran Duran and going nuts, and Depeche Mode, and all the
Oh
hits,
yeah.
and it's great. So I think that that's really important to sort of see. If you want things to grow, people work with one another. If you feel it,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because that's the way we can kind of create bigger and better. But
Hmm.
let's get back to you because you did something sneaky.
Oh
You,
no.
yeah, you. In the
No.
middle of all of this, we think Andy can't do more. She's a busy cow, writing and DJing and that sort of thing over here. You decided to make your own music.
Well,
How?
I'd released two tracks on my comps before that.
I know, but you really decided to kind of go in and do
I
your own
did.
release finally. I mean, from the comps to this, it was a while. But tell me how you, kind of like started to square away maybe more time for you to create more as an artist, right? Because it's a balance. Like we're
Hmm.
striking similar balances, right? Like I got the club, and then I try and make music, and
Hmm.
we're kind of running that balance. How is it for you now? To me, I was really happy to see it. I'm like, yes, put that first foot forward because the tracks that you had on the comps were great. But I'm like, I don't know if it's sort of one office or if Andy's really kind of moved forward and you put off that great release on Afnam Vidagab, or however you pronounce it. I'm doing the best I
Apname
can,
Vita
guys.
Gaba. I don't
I'm
know.
doing the best I can. I
Yeah, me
love the
too.
label. The label's amazing.
Yeah,
You
it's the
know,
best label.
it's super good, and it was really nice to see that. So, could you tell me about putting that EP together and really kind of stepping out a little bit more, not on your own label, on a really respected Berlin-based label?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I made those tracks 2 years ago. Um, so it just once I'd made them, I sent them to Phil, who owns Afname, and he liked them. And I was like, well, I want a remix by Silent Servant. Well, Silent Servant offered, so I was like, of course, yeah, I want a remix by Silent Servant. So that took like another year to get the remix, and then the mastering, and then the pressing. So it just happened to come out during the pandemic. Um,
Got it.
so I had made this record thinking about releasing on that label because I was kind of like, well, I'm going to use what I love, but I'm going to make it a little bit more dance floor oriented. So
Mm.
using that really nice kick and just make it a lot more like able to be put in some techno sets or some industrial techno sets, you know.
Yeah.
And it worked. So I'm And I mean, I used that record to get more DJ gigs, but now there are no DJ gigs. So
Yeah, but at the same time, though, the record in of it itself, I mean, to me, it you kind of crossed the threshold there. You kind of broke the fourth wall a little bit. I feel like there are a lot of DJs who maybe sometimes they put out an edit or something else, like but then they don't do much else. They like to remain in the DJ realm. That's kind of what they're comfortable with, and that's fine. But when you put out a record and you're like, your person is like on the record, and you're like, hey, I'm stepping out as far as like as an artist in like a solo artist kind of way. There's something that's like with more intention there. And it got great reviews. People like loved it, and definitely were playing it around. And honestly, if we had more parties that have more of an opportunity, even though I'm right now a horrible DJ. I haven't done it in probably like a year and a half to 2 years, or a year and a half, because I'm like, I've been working on music, and then I just didn't really DJ much before the pandemic. I feel like so ready to do something, but of course we can't. So it kind of is what it is. So as far as releasing music, you released that. Have you been working on any other projects? Anything you can tell us about kind of what's going on?
Well, I mean, I do want to say, like, I started making music because that album, because I was sick of how it was like a circle jerk of like the same people doing their music and like doing remixes and stuff, and also it was just like something I really need to get out. But yeah, I am working on new music. I don't want to say too much. I like to hold my cards close.
I like that.
But yeah, I have a really good routine. So I work every single day, no matter, even if I just get like one like little bleeps, I work every single day just to get something done. And it seems to be working pretty well, having this like quarantine routine going on. Yeah.
That's good to kind of build that habit. I'm kind of the opposite of that. I go I kind of go in like fits where like I don't do anything for 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden I start like 10 things, or I finish stuff, and I'm like really productive, and then I stop for a while, and it's like I kind of got to like reload, I'm like boom, and then I got to like reload. So everyone has a different thing, but I try and kind of get back to it. I'm in my studio right now, and I'm finishing the vocals for the new record that I'm going to put out for you. So, we're out here working. And I think that it's a really nice time to, kind of communicate with yourself and to try and get into these things, and also like learn new things. We lead busy lives, and sometimes you're doing all this other stuff. You get, you're like, hey, I'm going to learn more about this synth, or I'm going to learn more about production, or whatever you have. So for you, you've been creating the routine and then writing more.
Yeah, just kind of diving in, and I've been watching lots of movies to find samples.
That's great. Yeah. Obscure, of course, right? We can't. We can't have the publishing police knocking down Synthicide.
Yeah, just the worst, trashiest, sleaziest erotic thriller movies you've ever seen. Yeah.
That's hard at work. Hard at work at Synthicide HQ.
Exactly.
If you want trashy, if you want naughty, if you want that, we got it for you. If you want romance novel at a Virginia drugstore, Synthicide.
Can't get better than that.
You can't get it better than that. So let me sort of ask you, as far as streams or anything else like that, do you have anything on the DJ calendar on that sort of end? Could you talk about some of that stuff? Let's plug a few of those things, because you have been actively DJing a lot during all this.
Surprisingly, yeah. I've tried to like pare it back a little bit, because it was pretty wild for a good time, and like DJing on vinyl.
Like, Andy's busier fucking now.
I was like, and plus DJing with vinyl, because I don't have CDJs at my house. It's like the setup and the practice of doing vinyl is insane. It's like it requires so much work. But I do have a Italo set coming up at Good Room on Saturday.
Oh, nice. Is that that's with Rock, right?
Yeah, Rock One and Facets. So we're doing 5 hours of Italo. Yeah, it'll be fun. We do like back to back all night and just raise some money for a good room.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. For people who are not from New York, Good Rooms, an awesome like 350 person around size club, like really cool. There's like a ton of good events, and they've been doing a lot of streaming. So definitely check out Good Room for just supporting them, and also they
Yeah.
have great channels. So you know worth checking out. And if Andy's on there, it means it's going to be good. And Rock is a friend also. He's an amazing DJ. So they
Hmm.
definitely put on some great programming IRL, but also virtually now for you guys to check out. We had a question in the comments that I thought was something that was rather interesting. Is there any kind of particular piece of gear that you particularly like using that is sort of like your favorite, or instrumentation that you like?
Um, I, I don't want to give away my favorite synth, but I really do love the R50 drum machine.
Okay,
No,
cool.
I'll give it away. It's a JV1080. That's like my favorite. I have the rack module JV1080, and it's the most amazing synth I have. I love it so much.
That's cool. Yeah, no
Yeah.
doubt. Yeah, I got a bunch of stuff here, and I picked up a couple of new things. I've been getting into the wavetable game,
Mm.
which has been very fruitful and interesting. A whole new world for old Dave over here.
I
That's
used
cool.
I used the MS-20 on my last record, but not for the new one. And I'm using a TX7 for my new record.
That's cool.
I do
Yeah,
have a TX7.
see, everyone's trying to figure it out, man. They want to know.
It's
But
classic.
yeah, oh, absolutely, and
Yeah.
a lot of great machines. I actually have mostly newer.
Mm. I don't
Uh,
use anything new.
yeah, I kind of have and newer stuff that kind of, I mean, like the Manther kind of sounds a bit old and has a lot of circuitry that was sort of kind of sourced from kind of different machines from the 80s and stuff. But and the Hydra synth is sort of modeled off of a lot of 90s wavetable synths. So
Oh, that's
it's
cool.
kind of like new trying to be old again, But yeah, that stuff is obviously, it does the trick. It sounds great, and
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
classic in sound and in design.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I believe minimal is better. I only have
Yeah.
two synths currently and a drum machine and like this huge mixer from the 70s. And it's like, I don't know, 40 pounds and like makes really nice reverb and it's like super noisy. So it's like it adds a little bit of layering to it. Um, yeah, I like really believe in minimalism when it comes to that. Because if I have too many options, I'm like, oh, I can do better. You're looking
Yeah.
around forever.
I almost look at it honestly like it's a band. Like I have like my drummer, I got my
Right.
bass player, and then
Yeah.
like if I switch one out, I'm like, oh, all right, cool. So like I need to find a new bass player for
Oh
this.
no.
But I only really
Kick him
have
out.
one bass. Yeah, I'm like, man, he's talking back. I'm so fucking mad at this guy. I don't know. He's got work. Fuck you. But yeah, so basically I kind of almost think about it like that, and I try and keep it streamlined too, because you could just get bogged down in the options, man. Bogged down in modernity. Not good.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mixer's definitely haunted or has like lots of dead bugs in it. I'm not sure which.
That's the secret. That's the secret sauce. Right?
Yeah, cockroaches.
Yeah, get the dead bug mixer from the Synthicide web store. It'll be the you gotta make your own plugin, man. The dead bug plugin.
Oh my
That's
God.
good. Yeah.
So nasty. I mean, I should open it and clean it out, but I'm kind of terrified to see what's in there.
No, I think you need to keep it closed, and you never want to open it. If it works well, you never. I think it's just like, just let it do what it's doing and just let it go.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Are you drinking seltzer? What are you drinking?
Yeah.
That's cool, dude. Check this out. If you watch Rick and Morty, I got like a pickle Rick.
Oh no, I've never seen that.
bowl. Yeah, for those out there, it's fucking sick. Yeah, I got like, I'm really glad it's set up in here. I feel good.
Yeah, it sounds like you have like a whole studio and everything. I have like a fold out table here in the corner of my bedroom.
Dude, check this out. I'll give you an exclusive. I'll give you a tour. See,
Whoa.
That's the other side of the room. I got my Vitus skateboard over here hanging.
Professional.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. So yeah, see, the real heads know Pickle Rick is the cheek. So yeah, pretty pretty good. I mean, it's pretty amazing. Like you were saying, you know, you got into this routine. I'm just like, I've learned how to make my own records and like really like just try hard to like do that. So I think we're going to all come out of this time with maybe hopefully, you know, some new skills to apply to all of the things that we were already doing, you know? And so I'm hoping that I hear more Andi tracks and Andi music, because
You will.
that record came out really, really well. And so that's definitely an awesome thing. Are there any writing projects we want to talk about before we bounce? We got about like another 4 or 5 minutes. Anything of note, or have we put that on the back burner a little bit?
No, definitely not on the back burner. I mean, I have an interview I did with Reese Fulber of Frontline Assembly coming out on Friday on Post Punk.
Voila.
Yeah, but yeah, nothing like huge. Just I'm doing a little bit of freelance here and there, but yeah, it's hard to like balance everything from like DJing, writing, working at my part-time job, and you know, making music and watching my erotic thrillers. You know.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a
the
full-time job.
research is important. This is key research. So, like, you got to get a tax write-off for that, I think, you know?
Definitely.
I think that I think that's what's going on here. That's very, very important. So that's basically what we got to look forward to. Andi, I want to thank you for just joining us.
Dave.
You are the shit. We love Andi. We can't wait at Saint Vitus, since it's on this channel, to have you back for all of the great things.
I can't wait either. I miss it so much.
Not only for us, but also just around the city. You're definitely a big part of the fabric of the city, and we enjoy it. We enjoy you. So look forward to doing tons of cool shit together. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks, guys, for joining us.
Thank you.
Quarantine out. Mwah. Peace.
Bye.